Hello, everyone. Welcome back. If you're new to me, I'm Shua Allegra, the founder of Grace and Hope Consulting. And today I have a new friend with me, Julien. Do you mind just telling us who you are, what you do, and where you're located?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much, Shu, for having me here. I'm really looking forward to it. So, as you mentioned, I'm Julien. I've originally from France, although I currently live in Romania after a number of other countries like the UK and Netherlands as well. Um, and I would say probably to make it short, I've always been in learning and development, started 15, 20 years ago, more around training, soft skills training, leadership training. And for the last 7 years, I've been a coach. So I certified as a coach, and 4 years ago I decided, okay, it's time to go and set up my own company, my own practice. So I'm now doing full-time coaching, still doing a little bit of training on the side. And one of the things that I focus a lot on is resilience coaching. So I work a lot on resilience coaching, and more recently I brought an element of the diversity and inclusion and equity and belonging into my work on resilience as well, and kind of creating that correlation between the two.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And what we do here at Grace Consulting kind of overlap around there, those things too, with coaching and helping people be resilient. And then using that to promote well-being, inclusion, belonging in the workplace and in society at large. So let's focus on kind of the workplace environment, if that's okay with you. Okay. So how do you think like leaders can create and promote resilience in the workplace?
So I think that's a very interesting question. And I think for me, it goes back always to focusing on the individual, because we're all very different. We're all bring our own experiences, we bring our own skills and knowledge and so on. And quite often what I've noticed is that a lot of organizations are trying to have kind of a very blanket approach. And I think we can apply that on the resilience as well as on the diversity and inclusion. Let's do something that is going to be the same for everyone. But behind that, we forget that actually each individual has a different way, first of all, to learn, which is going to make a huge difference in terms of how they're going to develop. But also there is an element where they need to be motivated to move forward. So I think the first thing for me is really focus on each individual. And the next thing as well is to create programs that are not necessarily very difficult to grasp. It could be very, very simple tools. One that I love, and I'll share it now if that's okay with you, is
that's fine.
It's a very, very simple exercise. But imagine you're two people in front of each other. You put your hands behind your back, and at the count of three, you show to the person in front of you, so both people do it at the same time, a number on your fingers. So you show both hands and you show a number of fingers that you choose. And the game is the first person across that pair of people to count the number of fingers you have between the four hands, so mine and yours, for example, kind of wins. And what it does, it's a very simple game. It's actually used by the American basketball team before their games as well. It's a very, very simple exercise, but it creates focus. And behind that, when we're creating that focus, when there is a challenge coming in the workplace, we're able to really look into what's really important in the moment and not be distracted by all the other things that are going to stop us to move forward. So there are so many of these small exercises that we can do as individuals or as a group, as a leader, for example, willing to kind of increase the resilience of their people. And we don't always realize how simple it can be. So I think for me, that's the second thing as well. How do we create things that people can grasp easily, people can do day in, day out, because ultimately what we want to do is we want to change our own habits.
Right.
And it comes one step at a time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well said. I think that person-centered approach is so important. Like we do everything we do, it has to be person-centered. Because when we start, doing this blanket, programs per se, it's like, oh, one size fit all. Well, guess what? You miss everyone because you're trying to accommodate everyone in the same way. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. So very, tailoring things to individuals, but I also like you said about not complicating things. We think, for something to be successful, it has to be so, big. It has to be, I don't know, so many steps. So, but when the more complicated things get, the more you lose people in it. If I can't follow the process, then, we're never going to get to the end of the process. I'm not even likely to even initiate or pursue whatever program it is, because it's too complicated. If there's too many steps or too many things to grasp to understand, it that people get disengaged. You lose the same people you're trying to pull into the program, you lose them by complicating things. So I agree with you. It has to be very simple. Go ahead.
The image I always have, sorry, we wanted to say the image I always have is, and probably you're the same, I'm the same, we're all a bit like this, is you wake up in the morning and you're full of motivation to do something different. But you start your day. If you have kids, I need to think about, okay, what are we going to do for breakfast, dressing them up, getting them out of the door. And then you go to the office and there was always something to firefight. And then you come home in the evening and the same routine you need to go through. There's so many things we have in our minds in every day that if we start making things complicated, then, as you said, we're going to lose them. We already have a lot to focus on. Let's make it simple in the workplace to help people move forward like this.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that. And the
Sorry
other
for
thing,
stopping.
it's a two-way conversation. So feel free to, to stop me anytime. And you also said something that I liked was about, not keeping it simple, but these exercises, activities that we do ongoing, help build resilience long term. You don't wait for crisis to happen in order to teach resilience. When crisis happen, we apply the resilience we've already been learning when things were calmer, back when things were quiet and there was no stress per se. Right. So it's kind of building those things into everyday practice, like I like you said, the simple exercise, doing it. We even teach people how to do things like doing meetings, like, build into activities, into your icebreakers to help people process the emotions. Like, hey, how was this month? How did this month go for you? What are the highs? What are the low? How did you overcome? What challenges did you overcome? You're helping people to process the emotions, helping people to build resilience before they actually need to apply it. And most of us, like you say, it's go, go, go. There's so many things we need to do at home, at work, businesses, in society, that we don't always take the time to stop and reflect. Right? It's like, oh, something, I just do what needs to get done. I'll push through. And then when someone forces you to think about it, to reflect on it, you're like, oh, actually, I am resilient. I did overcome X, Y, and Z. I can use those same skills into the next challenge that come in, that pops in my life or at work, at home. So thank you for sharing that. And for individuals, then, I guess my next question is, as people are coming to work with the idea that we're already so bombarded, right, with things at home, and right now with this COVID thing that never ends, it feels like it's never ending, been in this for now, it's soon 2 years. And, people are already coming to work stressed out, right? And so how can, for employees, for all of us, not just leaders, but not just the leadership level, but everyone, I see everyone as a leader. That's a whole different conversation. But how can all of us, as we're coming into our places of work, whether it's you're working for yourself or working for someone else, to start not just taking care of ourselves per se, but building that resilience mindset, so that you are able to focus, like you said, and get and do what needs to get done for that day.
And that's a very good point. And I think it goes back to any kind of learning process that I think one of the things we need to remember is we can always get better. For some people, it might take a little bit longer because, I don't know, we don't put as much energy or effort, or even we're not as interested, possibly. But every single one of us has a way to get better at anything.
Mhm.
And I think what is important is sometimes when we want to become more resilient is to go back to maybe some of these other experiences that are similar, where we were not that good.
Mhm.
And little by little, we actually become better. And we are simply our job, the job we're all doing at the moment. I don't think any of us is born thinking, I'm going to be an accountant, or I'm going to be a coach, or I'm going to be a nurse. We had to learn these skills, and clearly we're good at what we're doing because we are where we are now. And I think it's the same to remember with resilience is the fact that we need to, and as you rightly said it, we need to reflect on some of the things that have worked, what has not worked, how can I take it forward? What is it I can do differently? But also, I think for me, one of the ways that is really, really helpful to become more resilient is also to look at the other people around. For example, you might be much better at, I don't know, managing risk than I am. What can I learn from you that would help me be maybe less adverse to risk, and vice versa? Maybe I'm more confident in my own abilities, and you could learn something from it, and so on. So using kind of who are these I would say these heroes around me that I can look up to, and what strategies do they use to be more resilient themselves, and how can I use some of that for myself? So that's, I think, another way that can be very, very useful as well. And I think the last thing as well is, because you talked about the mindset, is how do you look into a slightly more positive overlook to it as well? Again, an exercise I love to use, it's called turning ants into pets. And the ANTS is the acronym for automatic negative thoughts, and PETS is positive enabling thoughts. So how do you tell yourself, what are these positive thoughts that are actually going to enable me rather than pull me back? And it's a very, very simple exercise at the end of the day. I mean, everybody can do it. You can really go in depth if you want to, but it's just asking yourself sometimes, right now, I'm in a mindset where I'm telling myself I cannot do it. What's the impact of telling myself that? And what should I better tell myself that is more positive, that is going to enable me to move forward? And what's going to be the impact on that? How more successful am I going to become if I think in that way?
Yeah. Oh, so such good nuggets there. Definitely. I like, the point that you made about looking for resilience in others. Sometimes it's okay to borrow someone as a strength, right? And we as human beings, I think we spend so much time comparing ourselves already, and often to a detriment. But you can use that instead of comparing, but use it as inspiration, as a source of strength, instead. So like you said, it's seeing someone who has the skills that right now I might be struggling with. It's learning from them so I can build my resilience around that skills, around that issue, that concern, that challenge. And I think that's something that we often shy away from. People often will compare from a distance and get, and shame themselves and, look down on themselves, instead of looking from a distance, say, hey, this person is doing this well, and then getting closer to the person and say, hey, you're doing this well. What can I learn from you? How can I learn from you? Very, very, very good tool there. So with all of this, to include with resilient, you and I both do work around inclusion, and I want to just tap a little bit on how can leaders use resilience to build inclusion in the workplace.
Well, actually, what I would want to say on that point you're making is that the great thing from the research that I've looked into, and the correlation between resilience and inclusion, is that it goes both ways. So there's that kind of virtuous circle that when you become more inclusive, it helps you to become more resilient, and when you're more resilient, you're more inclusive. So I think already just thinking about it like this gives you that idea of how it can really accelerate your own resilience really, really quickly. And I think for me, one of the things that that comes to mind when I think about inclusion and how it relates and it impacts my resilience is the fact that as soon as we have a very diverse group, so that's the first layer, we're not talking about inclusion yet,
Right.
but as soon as we have diverse group, we have diversity of thoughts, we have diversity of experiences. And when we link it to the resilience, well, when we have a challenge that comes up, we're not looking at it anymore in a one way view. We are looking at it with the view of all these people that we have within our team, and looking for solutions that are going to be going further than what we may have decided. So there is a big learning going back to the people around us that we can learn from. I think here there is a big thing. Then the second thing is now we move into the inclusion itself, which is that next layer, not just having a diverse group of people around us, but really having a group where everybody can share, everybody can bring their opinion without any judgments. Then suddenly we have a gigantic impact on our resilience, at many different levels. How do we take new challenges on board and take risks? I talked already a little bit about bouncing back from some of these challenges. Obviously, that's and finding the right solutions. But also there is an element, and when I look at resilience in a kind of wider term, there are some elements around confidence, and not just confidence in your own abilities, but interpersonal confidence that are extremely important. And I think having that very inclusive environment allows you to create that interpersonal confidence. And then finally, another element for me that is part of that resilience, that where it is going to have a huge impact, is the control. Obviously, there is an element that is around our own emotional control, but there is what I call the life control as well, the control of our environment and everything that is happening around us, which when we have a group on which we can rely on, we can share also our own thoughts and be vulnerable and say, I'm struggling, or I don't understand everything, because I think that's part of being inclusive as well. It's me being able to say, I don't know everything. Then suddenly we're able to say, well, I need help from you guys to be able to feel more in control of my environment, which then ultimately is going to make me more resilient as well. So I think there are so many different angles where being inclusive has a really, really positive impact on us becoming more resilient. We could be here for hours, I guess.
I know. Definitely, I was talking like, where brain is going. I'm like, wow, so true. Like I so agree that, the more resilient we are, the more inclusive we can become, and the more inclusive we are, the more resilient we become. It is this, cycle that keeps, kind of giving, and I need to think about it also, take kind of putting in my hat as a mental health consultant here. When you think about it, when people feel included, into anything, whether, think about kids with sports, they're like, I'm part of a team, I got selected, I made the cut, I'm in. And when they feel included, it builds that confidence, like you said, right? I feel more confident because not just I have a place, but like, oh, here I can contribute. Right. And so that extra layer of inclusion and moving from that diversity to the inclusion is that it's like diversity. It's a given, you look around, you are not here as diverse as can be. Right. There's so many differences already, but we also bring so much to the table. Now, when we feel included is when we're empowered to use those differences for the greater good. Right. Where I bring my part to the table, you bring your piece to the table, and together we're working for something better. And so that, and not only empowers people to feel more and to feel more confident individually, but also as each person is included and empowered to use their skills and experience to contribute, together we're building that, you could say, that collective confidence per se, but also that collective resilience. Because now I know I can lean on, on Julien if I'm struggling with something that he's really good at, and vice versa. So the team at the end wins because everybody has something to contribute. And now it's not a competition. It's not, it's again, it's that collaboration instead, right? And the other element you brought was the element of being vulnerable. It's, when we're fully included, when we feel like we know it, that's going to be moving from that inclusion to belonging. Because if I feel I belong in this group, I feel emotionally safe enough to be vulnerable. And and be okay saying, you know what, I can say that I'm struggling here. This is hard for me, and know that that does not change my status. It doesn't change how people see me or value me. They still appreciate what I have to contribute. But this is a safe place where I belong. No matter what I say or do, I have a place here. And that really built resilience like to 100-fold, right? And because then it just helped people to always, like you said, always want to learn and grow, because that the environment is kind of allows for that, right? It's a fertile soil, if you want, for people to grow when they are included, when they're, they're not just included, but where they belong. And with that belonging come the emotional safety to be vulnerable, and a very good place to learn and grow at their own pace, and in any way that works for them. So yeah, thank you. Like you said, we can be talking about this, all day long. But is there anything that you want to add before we kind of wrap this up?
Oh, maybe just one thing actually that came to my mind, and I think it goes to maybe the leaders out there who are building their teams to be more inclusive and more diverse is not to give up too quickly. Yeah. I think one of the difficulties of diverse teams, and the more diverse they are, the more difficult it becomes, is at the beginning. Because of course, we will all come from our own different backgrounds with our own experiences and our own ways of doing things. And that's for sure going to clash at some point. Not always, but there are some moments when we're going to have disagreements or we're misunderstandings or whatever it might be. But I think what I love about some of the research that has been done around teams becoming more inclusive is how the performance is tenfold in the long term. Even though the first part, it definitely, I mean, if we talk about the forming, storming, norming, performing stages of the team, the storming is going to be huge storm, but the performing is going to be huge as well. And I think that's probably the last message I would want to leave people with is, don't give up, and make sure you take it step by step as well. It will take a little bit longer to form the team at the beginning and to put it together, but the results are worthwhile. And taking that time, I think, is going to be very important in the long term.
Right. And that's also how leaders built their own resilience, right? And not giving up as they're trying to put teams together. But even when the team is already established, as they're trying to maintain grow teams, right? And I think what makes a good leader is that they create other leaders. So when it gets, as you're building that team, as you're sustaining, as you're growing it, always be thinking about, okay, what are the other leaders in my team? What are those people who have expertise and strength and skills in specific things that the team needs, and start delegating that so that you as a leader are not too overwhelmed and you build your own resilience, to address other things as well. Yes. So yeah, right on. So I know you're busy, but what are you working on right now that, that people can support? And also, where can people follow you and find you?
Well, let's start with where they can find me. So my company is called Future Minds Consulting, and my website is wearefutureminds.com. So that's, I think, probably the best place to reach out to me. You can contact me. There's my email address on the website, and there is a link towards all other social media as well. So if you prefer to reach out to me through social media, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, Twitter as well, so you can reach through the website to all of these, and with pleasure, actually, I'd love to have more conversations with anyone who would be interested in. But in terms of some of the things I'm working on at the moment, I think one of the biggest ones is a program that kind of, again, bridges between that diversity and inclusion and that resilience. But I would say it's probably not the entry level program. It's really taking it to the next level. I know a lot of organizations out there are doing work on diversity and inclusion, which is great, but it's how do I help people really take it to the next level? And it's a hybrid between actually a group coaching and the individual coaching program. So the ability to, as we said several times today, learn from others as well and get some of their strategies, but as well to focus on yourself and what works for you as an individual. And as part of that, if people are interested as well, I have an inclusion questionnaire or self-assessment. If people are interested to take it, I'm more than happy to send as well that that assessment for people to look into. So that's one of the big things I'm working on. And then one maybe that is closer to just the diversity and inclusion, is more of a personal passion, is I support as well a brilliant organization, a charity over there in the US called Coaching for Everyone, that supports BIPOC communities to one, receive complimentary coaching, and two, for BIPOC individuals to become certified as well as coaches. So if you want to have a look at it and support the cause, that's something I've really enjoyed. Love working with them, and they're called coachingforeveryone.org.
Yeah,
there you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you for not just being here today and sharing your your knowledge and wisdom with us, but thank you for what you do out there in the world. You are busy making a difference, and we on behalf of everybody else out there, just say thank you. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much for having me today, and it was a pleasure being part of this journey as well.
Awesome. Yeah, for everyone watching or listening to this later on, we'll put the links that he mentioned there. You can click to follow him on his website, and feel free, like you said, to ask, go on there, email him, ask for that questionnaire. He'll send it to you. And I assume also the program you mentioned, the hybrid between the coaching and group around taking inclusion to the next level, that also will be available on your website, correct?
Yes.
Awesome.
Totally.
All right. Well, everyone, this is the end for this segment. As always, be well.